Hi there! Welcome to your first lesson in Design Summer School with Brianna Christine Designs. Today, I'm going to teach you some simple and fun animation techniques using Adobe Photoshop. And believe it or not, I've been using Photoshop for a long time, but I had no idea that Photoshop had animation capabilities until my coworker Van told me a couple months ago that you could make GIFs. And thank you, Van, for showing me this, my new favorite thing to do in Photoshop. And as for you, heads up, class of 2015, employers hiring graphic designers say that Adobe Photoshop is the #1 skill they look for in a designer. So you'll want Adobe Photoshop, this program, to be your best asset in your toolbox. And admittedly, I didn't use this for a client project, but I did use it for a friend, and who doesn't like to create fun things for their friends? So you can see my animation that I created here for my coworker. It was her birthday last week. And I animated the frames using my iPad on the app Procreate, or you could almost say I did a reverse animation. I drew out the cookie first and then erased it on a different layer. I duplicated the cookie layer a couple times and then just went back and erased each one until I had this. And that was awesome because Procreate let me take each one of those layers and just immediately export it to my computer so that I could open it up in Photoshop. And then that created each one of these individual layers here. And then once I got into Photoshop, I could immediately start working on the timeline, which you can access in the window drop-down right here, timeline. And then that will give you this box down here. And what these purple boxes are is they show the length of time that each frame will play. So the longer the box, the more time each frame will play. You can adjust the length by clicking on the side here and getting this icon and dragging it, or you can move the entire box if you want to put it in a different place on the animation. So you can see here that I just let it be pretty straightforward. And in another situation, I made one for my dad earlier today, and I was able to do some overlap of animation. Usually you'd be able to see both frames here, but because this particular animation has a white background on the behind each cookie, you can't see it in this particular situation, but you would normally be able to see that. So that's some pretty basic use of the timeline. Another useful thing is you can see more or less of the timeline by going down to this little toggle bar here. And that's super helpful if your animation was, it's pretty much any longer than like 15 seconds. And then that's a pretty basic thing. I just wanted to talk about the basics today. Now I'm just going to go straight to the exporting. So if you come down to this icon here to render, the nice thing is Photoshop will automatically create an MP4 file, which is good for using on the web or sending in an email. And the only thing you want to pay attention to, something I was having trouble with earlier on my dad's animation, is the frames per second can change as you're viewing it on Photoshop from the time you watch it on Photoshop to you render it. When I rendered my Photoshop file earlier, it actually played faster than I was viewing it on the screen. So maybe you might want to experiment dropping down the frames per second to like 25 or 20, whatever works for you. And then make sure all frames are selected. And then go ahead and hit render. Now, I'm not going to hit render in this case because mine's already rendered. But yeah. Thank you for joining me today for this lesson. I hope you learned something new that you can apply to your friends or maybe your clients. And happy experimenting. Please share any fun projects that you create as a result of this lesson. And until next week, happy summer.